There's no power. So, and my laptop is down. So,
Well, you're on and we appreciate that.
Like you're in a room or what?
You adapted. I don't do bad talking like that.
We wanted to continue our conversation that we started last week because there was so much we wanted to talk about. We didn't get through a lot of it. So, but let's jump right in because there's been a development in national security with, I'm sure you're following the scenes, with Keith Scotland, MP Keith Scotland SC, now being appointed in the Ministry of National Security as a minister with responsibility for the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service primarily. And he said in a couple of interviews that his priority is restoring public trust and confidence in the TTPS. What are your thoughts on the appointment one? And do you think this will make a difference?
well, let me answer the second part first. It's too early to know what difference, if any, it will have. A lot of it will depend on the person themselves, the resources, and the issues that have to be dealt with in relation to the police service. As for the appointment, I would see it in a positive light. I have always felt that the police service, being the arm responsible for law and order in the country, was to a large extent hamstrung by being tied to the other aspects of national security, where the Army, the Coast Guard, the fire services, the prisons, if you add all of them up together, I'm sure the numbers will still be less than the police service. So I think it's important to have a decoupling of the police service from the other arms. Not that this is not a matter of disrespect, but just to understand the key and important role that the police has to play in maintaining law and order on a day-to-day basis. So this is a bit of thinking outside of the box that I believe could have come before, but let's see how the new minister will approach it. I know him from the old days, and most of the guys around my time. I think I came out of law school in '94, and he came out in around '96. I know him, so I'm familiar with both the senior minister and the junior minister in this case, and I wish them all the best, and I hope he jumps in with both feet and understand that the old ways of doing business will not work in this new environment and with these new criminals.
Dr. Hayde, you know what I want to ask you, because you were a founder, I believe, of the Police Service Social and Welfare Association, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
And I remember Christopher Hola. I knew him well.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
What do you think about the operations of the current Police Service Social and Welfare Association? How does that? How do they operate in your opinion?
Well, I don't go around trying to determine what people do in their own jobs when they're doing it, because you will always find some will say nay and some will say yay. And when I was there, I myself received criticism from the some people, police, members of the public, for how I was running the association. But what I would say is that I hope that the leadership of the association don't let personal ambition get in the way of their addressing police issues seriously. Why I say that is that I recall that one person applied for commissioner of police during the time I applied, and next thing that person ended up in parliament as a senator. And then we had another president subsequent to that applying to become commissioner of police as well. Personal ambition is fine, but in that role in the association, you are expected to sometimes sacrifice a bit of your personal ambition in order for the greater good. It's not to say that people should not get promoted. It's not like in my time when it was very difficult to get promoted. And in fact, most of the people who got promoted subsequently have myself and Mr. Holder, and Mr. Cunningham, Mr. Hazari, Mr. Dillon, those of us on the executive, Mr. Brown, deceased Mr. Chase. We fought a battle. And I myself drafted the new procedure for promotion that they have used over the years with tinkering here and there. That's seen men getting promoted very quickly up the ranks. It took me 15 or 16 years to move from constable to corporal.
Yeah.
Now people are senior super at that level.
You reminded me of something just now, Albert. You reminded us of something just now that I didn't pay attention to before, because you said that an applicant for commissioner of police ended up in the Senate, but that person also contested a seat for general elections. I just remembered that.
Yes.
Okay, I just have never paid attention to that.
Dr. Hayde, how do you think the process for the appointment of a commissioner of police should or could be changed? Because there have been a lot of concerns about how our commissioners are appointed. There is a process by which there are applicants who so desire to fill the position. The Police Service Commission vets and interviews the applicants. A merit list for police commissioner and deputy police commissioners are sent to the parliament, and the government of the day chooses who they want from that list, or not.
Yes, or you should say parliament chooses, but of course...
The government of the day chooses who they want for the commissioner or not.
Well, I would disagree with that.
Technically, it's the parliament, yes, but the government has the majority and they usually get their way.
Yes.
Right? Let me clarify.
And well,
Since you want the technicality in it.
Yes, and it's important because recently people have voted their conscience, and you don't know if it could be a situation where persons are allowed to vote openly their conscience. Then you might have different people being appointed or selected by parliament. I don't think that strictly there's anything wrong with the process that we have now, except that the Police Service Commission, their processes are very secretive, and it seems to me that those who have who hold in trump cards are the ones to benefit the most, in that they know these people, they interact with them on a regular basis. So those of us who are outside of that system stand a little chance of cracking the ceiling.
I have no idea what you're talking about. You're going to have to be more direct with that. That's very, very clouded.
Okay. I am saying that kinship, friendship, and relationship also affect who is appointed and selected by the Police Service Commission. For example, when they made a decision that persons who did not apply for commissioner would instead be put on the merit list for commissioner of police, I felt that that was wrong and in breach of all the principles that they talk about. And you find that people who have close relationships, if you recall, one member of the Police Service Commission in one selection process was said to have sent emails of the Police Service Commission activities or process or information to one of the candidates, Gary Griffith. And
we have is that a public and
that was public, Paul. Okay. That was public. Right. That was public.
That is public. And what I'm saying is known. And one member, at least, of that Police Service Commission was the beneficiary of not one, not two, but multiple firearm users' licenses. So then, that's what I'm saying, that there seems to be certain aspects of kinship, friendship, and relationship that affect.
That doesn't mean that they didn't qualify for FUL.
No, you have to remember, I have been arguing a long time. Yes, they may qualify for an FQL, but not variations that give them 5, 6, 7, 8 guns.
Okay.
That is an abuse of process as far as I'm concerned. And people receiving variations of 4 guns in one day. There was a time when the commissioner went out of the country for one day, and the person acting granted variation that same day of several firearms. That was never intended to be the position of variations. Not where it was where you wanted to change your firearm for some reason, or change the type of firearm that you have. But they used a loophole in there to grant people 25 and 30 firearms, not giving yourself, Mr. Richards, and other members of the panel firearms because you might qualify for a firearm, but giving people who seem to have inside information and inside access more firearms that they need for the function that they said they needed for, which is self-protection. Remember, we had a case where a former prisons commissioner was jogging with 2 firearms, remember? And shot himself in the leg.
I want to go back to the conversation about the new minister in the Ministry of National Security, and what do you think, given the governance structure, because a minister has a particular role and the commissioner of police has a particular role, and what do you think the new minister's role will be and can be in resolving the many issues related to the operation, efficiency, and performance of the TTPS?
Well, you just said it very clearly. The minister, and this was a criticism of the now senior minister, where everything that went wrong in the police service, the minister was given the blame. The minister does not manage the service. It is the commissioner of police. The minister does not even have authority to discipline and to take action with respect to the senior officers in the service. That is the Police Service Commission. But what the minister can do is focus every day without splitting time and between organizations to ensure that some of the issues that are to be addressed in the service are addressed by the commissioner. In other words, put some pressure on. That has to happen, and that should be the role of the minister, not in terms of taking over the functions, because
but what pressure can the minister put? The minister, once the commissioner is appointed, the parliament can hold the commissioner accountable through a JSC inquiry or interview or interface. The Police Service Commission has the remit of assessing the performance of a commissioner. We just had an assessment of Mrs. Here Christopher that nobody has access to. And a reappointment based on that assessment that nobody has access to. Apparently, it's a big secret. So what pressure can a minister put on a commissioner of police? Because a minister can't tell a commissioner to do anything. A commissioner is an independent officer, and that independence is enshrined for a particular reason.
But that is not always true. You had a former commissioner saying that he was called to issue licenses to certain people by the government, to which he acquiesced from the information.
Let's put it in context. No, he made. You could correct me if I'm wrong. Requests were made, and there are some machinations as between whether or not. And I think the former commissioner said that the process was already trained, and the request was to facilitate transportation of the said FULs to the person who's supposed to receive them. So it wasn't as if the person who asked, in the person of the Prime Minister in this case, that's what we're talking about, right? Let's not pretend, could have forced a commissioner to act, to think that, to give that license. So let's be very careful what we say.
Exactly. And that is why when you have someone saying that they will giving money to attack political opponents, the hard questions have to be asked. Since the prime minister or no one can pressure the commissioner, then therefore, was there any acquiescence in terms of in regard to the action that the person is alleging was asked to be taken? Because once you have that, then there's a problem. But in terms of the minister can be watching the police activities more closely every day, since that is the minister's only role and function. Basically,
but you said the minister can pressure the commissioner, and the minister should not be able to pressure any commissioner.
Listen, you can pressure without making demands, and you can make demands in a way that shows it is your authority to make demands. For example, you could ask information, you could request information, you could ask for reports to see what activities were undertaken or not being undertaken. And you can look at what the commissioner is supposed to do and to see whether those functions are being carried out efficiently. And the minister can say it, that it is not being efficient. And it is then for the other people, the Police Service Commission, Parliament, with people like yourself, to take it a step further. But it does not mean that the minister can't put pressure. What the minister can instruct and order the commissioner to take specific actions in specific things. But the minister can recommend, the minister can advise, the minister can suggest, the minister can ask, the minister can do many things that tells the commissioner, we are watching what you're doing, and your assessment, especially, and not just the commissioner, the deputy commissioners too, because after this commissioner leaves, I expect that some of the guys and ladies, deputy commissioner and assistant commissioners sitting there, are all aspiring and jockeying to become commissioner of police. They must do their jobs too, because, as we just said, Parliament will have to make decisions, and the government should be able to know the quality of people that are there and the work they have performed when they have to make a decision in terms of who to appoint.
Just to correct Tony Stark, he said, to correct him when you said that a former prisons commissioner, it was in fact a former prisons commissioner who shot it. The senior pharmacist also shot himself, but the former prisons commissioner was Dennis Pulchan, who had shot himself in.
Dr. Hayde, do you think it's appropriate for a prime minister, a minister of national security, and an energy minister to be making requests of a sitting commissioner of the nature that is in the public domain?
When you say making a request, I
about the fuels and the blasting licenses, that if we had to be made the emails that have been made public, WhatsApp messages that have been made public.
Under the Firearms Act, the commissioner is entitled to receive recommendations. In fact, there's a section for it for persons who are applying for certain types of licenses. And you had a big argument in Parliament as to whether it was a request, whether it was a recommendation or seeking information. I would treat all of that as a recommendation, because if the Prime Minister calls and says, oh, what about the FUL for so and so? He is making an inquiry, but the person receiving it would know and would say to themselves that the Prime Minister wouldn't be making a query for a person who is totally unsuitable for receiving it. Therefore, that in itself could become a form of recommendation, which is required and supposed to be done under the law. The police officers who do the investigations make recommendations, and all of it comes to the commissioner, who then sits and says, looking at all the information, I will or will not give. So there is nothing absolutely wrong about what was done in terms of making an inquiry, making a request, making a recommendation, doing a follow-up. Of course, the person who has to make the decision cannot allow that to influence the decision where they would bypass things that would otherwise disqualify that particular candidate.
And
So
we have
we
no
are
indication that that has been done.
at the in terms of by the commissioner.
Yeah, we have no
Well,
indication that any established process was bypassed prior to that. We have no information about that. So we need to understand.
Exactly the point. And because you could have recommendations being made even before, as I said, before the person make an application. If I had my way as commissioner of police, I would ask every judge, every magistrate, every member of parliament, every senior businessman or some persons in particular position, whether they wish to be considered for a firearm for personal protection. And if they say yes, then I would say, here's a form, apply. It does not mean I would automatically grant it, but what I would have done is allowed persons who I believe in the society ought to be armed with one gun, not 5, not 10, not 15, except they're doing hunting as well, and they could get 2. And then we go through the process for looking at the other things that could disqualify them from obtaining it. And the question would be asked, what would disqualify a judge, let's say, from obtaining a firearm if that person is still a judge? You see? So therefore, all this discussion and argument about the minister made a recommendation, he can't make a recommendation, that is nonsense. It is allowed under the Firearms Act. Yeah. But the minister, I did not like the way he answered the question because he was trying to dodge away from the answer, say it's not a recommendation. Yeah. I do not think that he understood the full import of what the Firearms Act allows.
Yeah, I said the same thing. I said the same thing. There's nothing wrong with a minister inquiring or asking anything. Just say, I did on behalf of the officers who are under my remit. I did. Nothing wrong with that.
Well, and I can tell you that when the opposition were in government, similar requests or in treaties or
recommendations,
follow-ups or recommendations were made.
Yeah.
And you had one commission. I don't see anything wrong with it, so I don't know what is the big argument about.
But I gathered, Dr. Hayde, that you, in principle, you don't have a problem with the issuing the amount of firearm users license that were issued. You have your problem would be the variations with the amount of variations that were made. I gather that.
Exactly. So when somebody says I issued let's say 7,000 licenses to law-abiding citizens, but when you look at it clearly, you might see that it is not 7,000 but 20,000 firearms were given out to those under those FULs, because people not counting the variations as a separate FUL, as the same FUL. And then you say, well, none of these firearms were used in the commission of a criminal offense. How do you know that? You'll have to know where every firearm is at every possible moment. And not only that, millions of rounds of ammunition also accompany those firearms. So how do you know that they were not used, sold, resold, and all of that, and used in crime? And all of that comes from the loose way in which certain things were done. And remember, some of the firearms, it was alleged that the persons who signed the application form, who signed the approval, was not the commissioner of police at the time.
Well, you're saying that's an allegation. So if you're saying it's alleged,
no, sir. I could say this, and you could ask him himself.
But you're just saying it's an allegation. You just said it is alleged.
Because no one has been convicted in court, but you can say what the allegation is, because the police officer has been charged in court for signing, including signing applications where the commissioner is the only person authorized to sign. And some of the signatures that appear to be the commissioner's signature, the commissioner is saying, I did not sign that. It is not mine.
So then what you're
That
saying
is
is
where-
that they're based on that, and also the issue, because this question was asked in Parliament about the ammunition. There is a serious gap to me with oversight of fuels granted to private citizens and their businesses, and I guess in some cases security companies, and the ammunition that are companies that in the country, because the state is on record as saying that, well, there was a gap in the tracking and the oversight of this to see, well, for example, if they give Richard Agubasing an FUL and 300 rounds of ammunition in a year, we don't know where the ammunition went. We may be able to track the firearm and the use of it when it comes to the renewal, but there's no proper system in place to track the ammunition.
Yes, and that's a serious problem. And that lack of tracking, lack of follow-up, that gap is the full responsibility of the commissioner of police, whoever he or she may be. And that person is accountable and responsible for everything under that. And see, people can talk that and say, well, no guns. Now it has changed, because I was the one who started saying in voice notes, it is impossible for you to say that no gun that you issued was used in a criminal offense. And you members of the media would just let the person repeat those talking points and not ask the hard questions. So, like, for example, that's why I said,
well, the other side of it, and Dr. Hayde, is that you're an attorney at law. And has there been any report in the newspaper or from the commission, the TTPS, that a legally issued FUL has been used in the commission of a crime?
No, what they have said, they have actually found evidence that and I could tell you that it has been used. No, you see, you have to know what a crime is, and maybe that's the problem here. If a man takes his licensed firearm, shoots his wife dead, and kills himself, is there not a murder?
Yes.
And is there not a suicide?
Did that not happen?
If you're talking about
it has happened on more than one occasion.
Are we talking about the issues with the defense force officer and or police officer? Or are we talking about a private citizen? Because in the case of the defense force officer,
no, I am talking about private citizens.
Well, then you're right. You're absolutely right. That's a crime committed.
I know the cases too.
Yeah. Let me give another example. Another example, and I agree with Dr. Hayde here, is that there have been instances where people, licensed firearm holders, take out a gun and threaten people in bars and so on, in pubs and so on. That's a crime also.
Yes.
Isn't it?
And you have to look at whether if a firearm has been discharged without reasonable cause within 40 yards of a road, that in itself could be a crime under the Firearms Act. Yeah. There are so many offenses, and it's impossible for us to know unless, as Dr. Richard was saying, we're able to track each and every firearm and each and every piece of ammunition, because we don't have all the firearms. We're supposed to have it, and I think they're doing it now, where all the firearms that are issued will be somehow fingerprinted, for want of a better term, so that if it's used in a offense later on, and you find certain things, you might be able to trace it back. But that's a difficult thing to prove and to even investigate. But the facts are that we have issued firearms to people and ammunition that we're not even sure, and those people are now targets because the criminals know that they have it, and they know they have plenty. So if they leave their house and they go out with one, what happened to the other 10? It must be in the house somewhere, and they will all become targets because people are not as careful as we think they should be with firearms. And we keep thinking we are America. We are not.
Are you suggesting in any way that that might be the cause of some of the home invasions that we would have seen prominent in certain places?
Look, one former commissioner told me of a case where it was alleged that police officers were renting firearms from the station and used to commit offenses, and then return to
renting
the
from
station.
whom? Renting from whom?
From the police, and return to the station after. And
Well,
they were
I'm glad you turned down this road. I'm glad you turned down this road, because what do you think?
And arrest people.
What do you think can be the effect? Because we've heard over the years, and I'm glad that you're keeping in touch, which I'm no surprised that you're doing. Cocaine get eaten, rats eat cocaine, guns and sealing in police station, PCA investigating X and Y. If you read the PCA report every year, their recommendations to disciplinary action, their recommendations to criminal investigation and charges, very often not operationalized, not executed. What do you think the role of the new minister will be in helping to deal with, to me, the most pressing issue facing the TTPS, particularly in the context of public trust and confidence, weeding out corrupt officers?
As I said before, first we have to bring back basic discipline, and it would mean addressing the friendships, kinships, and relationships that exist in the service that prevents officers from taking action. I believe that there should be a separate entity undertaking discipline for the service, because right now it's himself to himself, and you have had officers who on one day is the investigator, and on the other day is the alleged offender, and it makes it difficult for them to maintain a certain level of distance from the offense, as it were. Two things has to happen. We have to have an entity that is not part of the service hierarchy, but with the authority and power to collect information, get information, demand information, and prosecute persons for disciplinary offenses, and recommend to the commissioner or the police service commission for dismissal of those persons. So in other words, you take it away from the superintendent and senior superintendents who are either impotent about doing anything or unwilling to do anything. And at the same time, forget this nonsense of charging everyone for every little offense for misbehavior in public office, and then have the case going on for 15 years. And everybody dies, everybody forgets, and the bad egg comes back into the service to continue defaulting or stay on suspension with 3/4 pay for the next 15 years and engage in other activities outside of the service that could bring the service even more into disrepute, and you're leaving them right there at that. That is the problem.
But isn't the PCA naturally that institution once the legislation is amended to give them that power?
No, I don't think so.
You want to create a new institution entirely?
Only for discipline in the service, and it only has to deal with, for example, if you read carefully what the Police Complaints Authority does, they shadow the police, but they don't have authority to interfere with anything that the police.
But that's what Richard said with the right legislation. Richard said, with the upgraded, amended legislation to increase the remit
and give them the power to prosecute, because it is a power that David West has asked for.
Yes, but that's prosecution in the criminal court. That's beyond a reasonable doubt. I am talking about disciplinary offenses that where you can deal with it on a balance of probabilities long before we get to that point. Part of the problem is that the same bad eggs, the same rotten eggs, you understand, are continuing the service while we find a way to, in our slow and inefficient judicial system, to have them treading water for a long time.
But the
But doesn't
commissioner
the
of
police
police
commissioner already have that power?
has the disciplinary
Yeah,
powers.
exactly. But look, and I'll go back again with my mini thesis. Kinship, friendship, and relationship has affected adversely the commissioner's
Can you send
ability.
me that? Can you send me that paper, please? I'll show you write
I
something.
was, it's not, well, I've been doing it on my voice note, and I'm sure if you listen to all of you, you'll hear what it is.
That is too
And-
much voice note, Dr. Hayde. That
Yeah,
is
he's
too
very
much voice
he's
note.
a long one, eh?
So if the commissioner
Everyone
of police, if the
what
commissioner
I'm
of
talking
police, if the commissioner of police has the power to discipline, but you come back to the argument of kinship and friendship, then what you're saying, in a sense, logically, is that there is no professional and fit person coming through the ranks of the police service that can professionally put aside whatever batch I came with to make hard decisions. You're saying that nobody like that exists in the police service?
I am saying to you, it is a hit and miss process. And people can die, they can resign, they can get promoted out of the position, and then you're back to square one. And you can't be depending on a process where you leave it to one commissioner who spends 1 year, then another one spends 2 years, one spends 3 years.
And quite
You
frankly,
need,
commissioners have been reluctant to take action because, like the free court.
I think
Yes.
that is the problem. I think that's where
But
the problem rests. That
but I've said it because
commissioners of police have not exercised that function that comes under their remit.
Yep.
well, because the commissioner cannot do everything for himself or herself. You must depend on other police officers, some of whom have serious allegations against themselves. And then so who you depending on to guard the guards? In some cases you might be putting the fox to guard the hen house.
But they know. Come on, Dr. Hayde, they know the police.
No, sir.
They've come through the system. A lot of the times, the commissioner of police knows who the main bad eggs are. But what do? They tiptoe around the tulips and maybe
Richard
send
is
them
right.
on.
They're reluctant to exercise their thing.
Because they know very well that you're remember when I sing songs, sometimes I say things that are getting closer to the truth. When I said, "Do you want a watchman?" and I was alluding to the fact, I say I may point out the bad eggs, and somebody might be cleaning out the weapon, and doi clean up my tail and
It
say
has
accident.
happened. It has happened. It has happened.
And it wasn't. So therefore, the point to be made is this: that individuals as human beings know that it might be a risk. They might know the person has political affiliations, has criminal affiliations, has other senior affiliations that could harm them in their own role. That is why you need to have an entity. Doesn't mean that it will be 100% true, but if you're not waiting for promotion and depending on promotion from the same senior officers that you have to investigate, then you might be more inclined to put people on disciplinary charges once reports are made. Find the reports yourself. Do just like the PCA. If somebody reports to that entity, they take it and they ask for the evidence that the PCA will be unable to get in many instances, and you put the person on disciplinary charges. You have a tribunal to hear the case. You hear them and you make a recommendation to the commissioner for dismissal or whatever form of disciplinary action. If the commissioner fails to act, then it's right there. But as it stands now, the commissioner hardly even getting anything, because if somebody's strangling the hose at the lower end here, no water coming out the nozzle.
Dr. Hayde, are you willing to take some calls?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Trinidad and Tobago needs
phones
an
are open.
TTPS, needs an equalizer and a beekeeper. Watch those two movies. Equalizer and beekeeper. Watch them. That's what we need here.
No, I watch both, and both encourage extrajudicial killings.
Thank
which
you.
is something
I'm
that
glad you said that.
Because in a couple of them, people were handcuffed and tied up and left there for the police to come for them, you know.
yes,
All
yes,
of
but
them were killed.
that was only to make the movie seem humane, while you kill 90%. You know, I'm a movie buff, so I've seen all the movies, so I know.
The phone lines are up. We have 8 minutes to interact with Dr. Wayne Hayde, live from Kampala, Uganda. Let's hear you.
Somebody on the message chat asked if we asked Dr. Hayde about body cams, the use of body cams. What are your thoughts on it?
All right. Well, hold on to that thought, Dr. Hayde. We have a call online. Good morning.
I wrote to all in the studio.
Good morning.
And to Dr. Wade Hayde. I want to ask him, could you tell us what is the reason why it is that the Commissioner of Police, Ulla Christopher, cannot get the police officers to use the body cam? Thank you.
All right. So there the question has come live.
Yeah, it come up again. Dr. Hayde.
Same question. Listen, again, is the question of discipline. Who is responsible for ensuring that the police officers put on their body cams and use it? There must be a system and a trail to audit the use and non-use of it, and disciplinary action must be taken. But everybody seems to be afraid because they don't want to have to put on a body cam themselves. That is really the problem, you know. They're worried that if they go out on exercises, they might have to wear a body cam because they're not confident of the ability to do the job in a proper manner while being strong, resourceful, and resolute, and stand up to criminals and to people who are misbehaving on the streets without engaging in abuse and abusive language or abusive actions. That is what the problem is. And I've been looking at videos of police interaction and telling them when things are going right and when things are going wrong, should be arrested for obstruction and for assaulting police and all of these things, and in instances where police have overstepped the boundary because they don't seem to know what the law allows them to do and to do it properly.
I think
that's the problem.
I think I have a better job for you than Commissioner of Police. You know what that job is?
What's the job?
If I had the power.
To head the new unit.
No, Chairman of the Police Service Commission.
That too. But I would have liked to bring him back to head this new unit to discipline and deal with police officers.
Dr. Hayde, give me a song now. I mean,
we have called, gentlemen.
I'm asking to perform without a voice and a chorus, Steve. Cool it?
Yes, good morning.
Morning.
Yes, sir.
Yes, good morning.
Hey.
Morning, sir.
Hey, Dr. Hayde, good morning.
Morning, sir. Morning.
I am one of the persons who asked for your presence on this thing because I've been listening to you for the longest while. And the kind of things I used to hear with this thing with issuing firearm, we had to really tell us and to really give us the kind of information that you have. And thank God that you came today and you could indicate and say what is what. And I know there's a lot more. But I just want to thank you very much for shedding the light on this as to how this firearm thing and people making all kind of saying all kind of things about the government, this and that, and issuing 9 and 10 and 15 firearms. Thank you very much for clearing up that. Thank you very much.
I kindly appreciate, sir.
All right. Thank you, caller. Good morning. Good morning.
Morning, Mr. Watchman.
Morning, sir. Morning.
I remember those days, man, when we have Mr. Coco, Aloes, and Watchman. That was the day, that's how we did it. But you know, I was watching something some years back. In the United States of America, in the police service, they have a special branch investigating crooked police and bringing
yes, but the United States is a complex system, and the power rests with different people at different levels. So when you talk about established police things, and that's where they talk about internal affairs, but you have the FBI on top of them to investigate certain kinds of crimes committed by other people.
So you can have a big house and a big car, and the investigator, where you getting that money from? How you getting these things? And when they realize they're involved in illegal activities,
Well, we had a process in the service for declaring you indebtedness, and it was observed more in the breach because
you could remember when Gary Griffith had hold the man with the money and they put the man in La police station and the next police come and move it out.
Well, I don't know if those are the facts that you're saying, but I can tell you from my knowledge, things have disappeared from police stations. The rat eating the cocaine. Let me tell you, Dr. Richard, I could tell you that is possible. The rat could eat anything that you put there, provided that it's there for a long enough period and things have broken down to a large extent. For that to happen, it meant that and I know for a fact, our exhibit system broke down, where you go into a property room and you'll find 9, 10, and 11 exhibits on top of each other without any control, and anything like that could happen. That in itself is wrong, and that is what could cause these things.
It goes back to the lack of enforcement of disciplinary measures and for breaches in protocol. We have 2 minutes left, and several people are asking, because this is a pet peeve of this show. Do you think there's a willingness for police to embrace the issue of body cams for transparency and accountability based on what you've seen? And people are asking for a verse and a chorus before you go.
Right. No, they are not willing, and they have to be forced. If you remember, in the United States, in many of the police forces, they had a similar problem in the early. But now people have begun to understand that it can be also their savior when certain incidents happen. If you are confident and strong in your knowledge as a police officer, going outside there and talk, even if you have to talk stern and say, stop, don't come here, don't move. Or if you do this, I am going to tase you. Or spray you with pepper. You can stand up. But what happens is our officers seem to be so unsure of their ability that the only thing they could resort to is obscene language and sometimes unlawful assault. But if you know your job, you could take down people, you could arrest them, you can neutralize them with your firearms if necessary, and the body cam is going to save you. But until that happens, the commissioner of police and the senior officers have to take strong action. But some of the senior officers themselves are the ones resisting. And that is where the problem comes about with lack of discipline.
Let me put in the proviso. We're not paying you. There's no contract to sing, but you have to do a verse and a chorus whenever you're at a time.
Okay.
Dr. Hayde,
yes, sir.
Just before you do the verse and chorus, after our last interview, you would have been contacted by a guy named Gershwin Stephen, who lives in Portugal. You and he play hockey together. I understand we have an invitation to come to Kampala, Uganda, and we are going to be accepting it. I'm just letting you know that, right?
Well, thank you very much. I've had 2 groups of trainees who have come recently, and I was able to show them around. One was the someone who in charge of security at NCC. And what I want to the song I would like to the verse I'd like to give you is the song I believe what caused our problems in Trinidad to escalate to this point. I believe a lot of this is linked to the 1990 coup, attempted coup, where the Prime Minister was shot, where people committed serious criminal offenses and yet still were able to escape.
I have said that over and over. Crime took an inflection point after that time when consequences were not commensurate to treason.
So it was the Muslimin, and then it become what? The Muslim gang, and then you have the splinter into 6, 7, and they will go all the way up into all the numbers just now. And that is where it started from, because there was no accountability for those persons. And everybody have to take responsibility, because I know people sneak copies of the amnesty out of the Parliament building in their underwear, you know, and they didn't get searched. But anyhow, that's another story.
Are you saying he's on this show somewhere? No.
I like to hear you, you know. I just love to listen to you. Go ahead,
Sing,
sing
Doc,
away.
sing.
Right. So it's called amnesty. Divided opinion, mixed up reaction. Now that Abu Bakr is free. Some say they never thought that a sober court would have give killers amnesty. Well, my friends, you know this is Trinidad, and these things happen all the time, where the innocent ones they suffer, while the guilty escape with crime. Some people say I'm nice, while others say I'm nasty. But take this little advice. What has happened in this country? Baka said in them was so evil, we better off if all of them dead. But you know he still pardoned Robinson and killed some innocent ones instead. Now the state have to end up paying he with them same poor people money. And now the only struggle he have in life is how to rest a baby on his third wife. So why the hell we vote for a government? Why the ass we don't scrap the parliament? Anyone can run this country. All you need is a gun and an amnesty.
Dr. Hayde, thanks a lot. You know, we call you once a month.
So
We call you once a month, you know that, right?
He knows. Oh,
Thank you so much. Have a great afternoon in Kampala. We appreciate you.
And happy African Emancipation Day.
And happy African Emancipation Day.
Yes, to all of you in Trinidad, I'm in the motherland. You are in the adopted land.
are there any celebrations in Uganda today?
No, actually, it's you remember they don't have to celebrate emancipation. Only those from the diaspora who are here. There's a group and they have their own activities. But right now, there are some demonstrations going on in the city. I think some people want to follow the U.S. model of storming Parliament, storming Congress. Remember that was then followed by Kenya, right? And then some people are attempting to also adopt that model here. But I think that everything has been locked down.
I think it's World International Persons of African Descent Day anyway. So
Today.
Yes, and that includes everyone who has any African blood in them, even
claimed or not.
One, yes, even the, what do we call what I call them 1%ers, you could call them the one drop. There are a lot of people trying to have more than one drop.
Have a great day, Dr. Hayde.